"Do not touch that panel." Jordan Hayes said it calmly, but the warning carried enough weight to make Officer Eric Dalton hesitate for half a second. The deep red Ferrari sat at the curb beneath the late afternoon sun, its polished body reflecting glass towers, traffic lights, and passing pedestrians. Near the passenger side, a narrow section of carbon fiber was already sitting slightly out of alignment. Dalton looked at the panel, then at Jordan, then back at the car as if the machine itself had become evidence against the black man standing beside it. "You seem pretty concerned about what is behind there," Dalton said. Jordan kept both hands visible. "I am concerned about what happens when someone ignores a clear warning." Dalton gave a short laugh. "That your way of threatening me?" "No. That is me asking you to verify before you damage something you do not understand." Jordan checked his watch. 4:46 in the afternoon. Across the street, office workers moved through the lobby of a financial building. A black sport utility vehicle waited half a block away with its engine running. Inside the glass lobby, a woman in a charcoal business suit lowered her phone and stepped away from the window. Dalton noticed none of it. His attention stayed on the Ferrari and on Jordan. The registration had already matched. The license plate had already come back clean. The visible vehicle identification number matched the paperwork. Yet none of those facts had changed Dalton's expression. "Cars like this get stolen," Dalton said. "Documents get cleaned up. Numbers get copied." Jordan looked at him. "Then run everything again. You keep telling me how to do my job. I keep giving you ways to confirm the truth." Dalton's jaw tightened. The Ferrari was worth close to $50 million, but Jordan knew the price was not the most important thing on that street. The car was part of a court-authorized federal operation connected to a financial crimes investigation. A preserved trace behind the specialized access section linked the vehicle's prior history to a network of shell companies investigators had been following for months. Dalton did not know that yet. He also did not know that Jordan Hayes was a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Jordan had kept that fact hidden because the operation was still active. A man connected to Richard Vale's financial network was expected to appear inside the building across the street, and one careless disclosure could send weeks of work collapsing before the meeting even began. Jordan's phone vibrated once inside his jacket. He did not reach for it. Dalton immediately noticed. "Do not touch that phone." Jordan kept his hands where they were. "I was not going to." The black sport utility vehicle's brake lights flashed once. The woman inside the lobby turned away from the glass. Somewhere in the building, the operation was shifting into its next phase. Dalton stepped closer to the Ferrari. "If there is nothing illegal behind that panel, you should not care if I inspect it." Jordan met his eyes. "That is not how facts work." Dalton looked down at the carbon fiber seam. "I think I will decide that." Jordan checked his watch again. 4:46 and 12 seconds. His voice stayed level. "Officer Dalton, I am telling you one last time. That section is documented. Call a qualified technician." Dalton looked at him with the confidence of a man who believed hesitation would look like weakness. He reached toward the panel. Jordan did not move. He did not raise his voice. He simply watched as Dalton made a decision that would soon matter far more than the price of the Ferrari. The officer thought he was testing an expensive car. He had no idea he was about to interfere with a federal evidence trail. 20 minutes earlier, Jordan Hayes guided the deep red Ferrari into the downtown business district with the kind of patience that came from knowing every second of the afternoon had already been planned. The car drew attention without effort. Its low body reflected the glass towers above it, and the polished paint caught the late sunlight between buildings. People looked. Some slowed. One man near a coffee shop lifted his phone for a photograph. Jordan expected that. The Ferrari was supposed to be seen. What mattered was who noticed it for reasons that had nothing to do with admiration. He stopped near the curb outside a financial services building and checked the time. 4:26 in the afternoon. Half a block behind him, a black sport utility vehicle remained parked with its engine running. Two members of the federal surveillance team sat inside. Across the street, Special Agent Amanda Brooks stood in the building lobby wearing a charcoal business suit and holding a phone as if she were waiting for an ordinary appointment. None of them acknowledged one another. Jordan stepped out of the Ferrari and closed the door carefully. The vehicle was legally under federal control for a court-authorized operation tied to Richard Vale, a financier suspected of moving illegal money through collector cars, private auctions, shell companies, and overseas accounts. The Ferrari had once passed through a business linked to Vale's network, and investigators had preserved a trace inside a specialized passenger-side access section that could help connect the vehicle's ownership history to a series of hidden transactions. Every inch of the car had been photographed before deployment. Every factory marking had been documented. Every panel that mattered had been recorded. Jordan's role was simple in theory. Bring the Ferrari into view. Wait. Let Vale's contact recognize it. Do nothing that would make the meeting look controlled. His phone vibrated once inside his jacket. He checked the screen. Contact delayed. Hold position. Jordan put the phone away. A delivery truck moved through the intersection. Two office workers crossed the street carrying takeout bags. Amanda shifted closer to the lobby window. The black sport utility vehicle remained still. Then a marked patrol car entered the block. Jordan noticed it because noticing everything had become instinct. Officer Eric Dalton was behind the wheel. The cruiser passed the Ferrari at normal speed. Dalton looked at the car, then at Jordan, then back at the car. The patrol vehicle continued another 100 feet before its brake lights came on. Jordan watched through the reflection in the Ferrari's side window. Dalton stopped near the curb for several seconds. Jordan checked his watch. For 27 and 18 seconds. The patrol car pulled away, made a turn at the next intersection, and came back toward him. This time Dalton drove more slowly. Jordan remained beside the Ferrari. The plate was valid. The registration was lawful. The visible vehicle identification number matched the records connected to the operation. There was no traffic violation, no stolen vehicle alert, and no reason for Jordan to expect a routine officer to become part of the assignment. Dalton stopped beside the curb and stayed behind the wheel for a moment, studying Jordan through the windshield. Across the street, Amanda lowered her phone. Jordan felt the operation tighten around him. The contact had not arrived yet. The federal team could not move. Dalton finally opened his door and stepped onto the street. His eyes went first to the Ferrari, then to Jordan, and the expression on his face told Jordan something the paperwork had not yet been given a chance to prove. The officer was already trying to understand how a black man and a $50 million Ferrari could belong in the same picture. Dalton stopped several feet from Jordan and let his eyes move over the Ferrari before speaking. Afternoon. Jordan gave a small nod. Officer. Dalton looked at the car again. This yours? Jordan kept his voice even. It is under my lawful control. Dalton frowned slightly. That was not what I asked. Jordan understood the shift immediately. The question sounded simple, but the answer Dalton wanted was already forming behind it. Yes, Jordan said. I am responsible for the vehicle. Dalton glanced toward the license plate. You know how much a car like this is worth? I do. And you are just standing out here with it? Jordan looked toward the office building without turning his head enough to draw attention. Amanda Brooks remained inside the lobby. The contact had still not appeared. I am waiting for someone. Dalton's expression sharpened. Who? A business contact. Name. Jordan paused. Am I required to provide that? Dalton looked at him for a long second. You always answer questions with questions? Only when I need to understand why I am being questioned. Dalton stepped closer to the Ferrari. We get stolen high-end vehicles moving through this area. Clone plates. Fake registrations. Cars shipped through shell companies. Jordan kept both hands visible. Then you can check the plate. Dalton gave a faint smile. I was planning to. Jordan's phone vibrated once inside his jacket. He did not reach for it. Across the street, Amanda lowered her phone and moved slightly deeper into the lobby. Dalton noticed the sound. What was that? My phone. Do not touch it. Jordan remained still. I was not going to. Dalton looked him up and down, then back at the Ferrari. License and registration. Jordan spoke before moving. My wallet is inside my jacket. The documents are inside the car. Dalton nodded. Slowly, Jordan removed his driver's license, then retrieved the vehicle documentation with deliberate movements. Dalton studied the license first, then the registration, then the plate. He walked toward the windshield and checked the visible vehicle identification number. Everything matched. Jordan waited. Dalton checked again. Something does not add up, he said. Jordan looked at him. Which part? Dalton held the documents in one hand. A car like this. This neighborhood. You standing here alone. Jordan glanced at the glass towers, expensive storefronts, restaurants, and private offices surrounding them. This is a financial district. You know what I mean. Jordan did. He also knew there was no useful reason to say it for him. The registration matches, Jordan said. The plate is clean. The vehicle identification number matches the paperwork. Dalton's jaw tightened. Documents can be manipulated. Then verify them through dispatch. Dalton looked at him sharply. You seem very comfortable telling me what to do. Jordan answered calmly. I am comfortable with verification. Dalton folded the registration once, not enough to damage it, but enough to show irritation. Maybe you are too comfortable. Jordan's phone vibrated again. 2 short signals. The contact was close. Somewhere beyond the intersection, a dark sedan slowed near the financial building. Jordan saw it in the reflection along the Ferrari's side. Dalton saw. Jordan's eyes shift. What are you watching? Traffic. Dalton looked toward the sedan, then back at Jordan. You expecting somebody? Jordan held his gaze. I already told you I was waiting for someone. Dalton stepped toward the front of the Ferrari. Open the hood. Jordan did not move. For what purpose? Dalton's expression hardened. The facts had given him every reason to step away. Instead, he was looking for a new reason to stay. Jordan understood then that the stop was no longer about discovering whether something was wrong. It was about protecting the story Dalton had already decided to believe. Dalton kept one hand near the front edge of the Ferrari and looked at Jordan as if the question itself had become another reason for suspicion. Open the hood, he repeated. Jordan did not move. You have already checked the plate, the registration, and the visible vehicle identification number. Dalton glanced toward the windshield. And I am continuing the inspection. Jordan stayed calm. Based on what specific discrepancy? Dalton's mouth tightened. High-end cars get cloned. Numbers get copied. Paperwork gets cleaned up. Then verify what you have through dispatch. Dalton looked back at him. You really like telling me how to do my job. Jordan held his gaze. I like knowing what fact justifies the next step. Dalton walked slowly along the passenger side of the Ferrari instead of answering. Across the street, Amanda Brooks had moved closer to the lobby doors. The dark sedan Jordan had seen in the reflection now stopped near the far end of the block. A man in a gray suit stepped out and looked toward the financial building. Richard Vale's contact. Jordan's phone vibrated once inside his jacket. He did not reach for it. Dalton noticed the sound immediately. Still getting messages? Yes. From who? Jordan kept his hands visible. That is not relevant to your vehicle check. Dalton gave a short laugh. You keep deciding what is relevant. Jordan said nothing. Every extra sentence risked giving Dalton more material to reinterpret. Dalton's attention shifted to a narrow carbon fiber section integrated into the lower passenger side bodywork. Jordan saw the change in his expression and understood the danger before the officer said anything. What is this? Dalton asked. Jordan answered carefully. A specialized access section. Dalton bent slightly to look at the seam. Open it. No. Dalton straightened. No. Not without the proper tool and not without a qualified technician. Dalton stared at him. Why? Jordan checked the building across the street. The man in the gray suit had entered the lobby. Amanda turned away from the glass and moved deeper inside. The operation was now in motion. Jordan chose every word with care. Because that section has been documented, and removing it incorrectly can damage the vehicle. Dalton looked at the Ferrari again. Documented by who? Jordan kept his tone even. By the people responsible for its condition. Dalton smiled without humor. That sounds like you are hiding something. Jordan felt the familiar trap close tighter. If he stayed silent, Dalton called it suspicious. If he answered, Dalton treated the answer as proof. Officer Dalton, you have valid paperwork in your hand. You have a clean plate. You have a matching vehicle identification number. If you believe there is another lawful reason to inspect this car, call someone qualified. Dalton stepped closer to the panel. I do not need a specialist to look at a car. Jordan's voice became firmer, but not louder. You do for that section. Dalton glanced at Jordan's face, then at the carbon fiber seam. You nervous now? No. Jordan checked his watch. 4:34 in the afternoon. 12 minutes remained before the moment at 4:46 that would later define everything. I am giving you a clear warning before you make an unnecessary mistake. Dalton looked toward his body camera for half a second. Jordan noticed. You keep talking about warnings and records, Dalton said. Because records matter when people disagree about what happened. The words hung between them. A city bus passed through the intersection. A delivery driver rolled a cart toward a restaurant entrance. Nobody on the sidewalk understood that the most important thing happening on the block was not the rare Ferrari or the Federal. Operation moving quietly across the street. It was a decision forming in one man's mind. Dalton reached toward the carbon fiber panel. Jordan did not move. "Officer, stop there." Dalton looked back at him. Jordan's voice remained controlled. "That section is documented. Call a technician. Verify first." Dalton's expression hardened. Pride had replaced curiosity. He turned back toward the Ferrari, and Jordan knew the next choice would reveal whether facts still had any chance of changing the story Dalton had already decided to believe. Dalton kept his attention on the carbon fiber seam and ignored the warning hanging between them. Jordan remained several feet away, hands visible, watching the officer's confidence harden into something less careful. "You said this section is documented," Dalton said. "Then there should be no problem checking it." Jordan answered evenly. "Checking it correctly is not the problem." Dalton looked back at him. "You really think I am going to damage a car just by opening a panel? I think you were told it requires a specialist." Dalton turned toward the Ferrari again. Across the street, the man in the gray suit had disappeared deeper into the financial building. Amanda Brooks was no longer visible from the lobby. Jordan's phone vibrated twice inside his jacket. Contact confirmed. Hold position. He did not move. Dalton pressed near the edge of the access section. The panel did not release. He shifted his hand slightly and tried another point. A dry mechanical click sounded beneath the bodywork. Jordan's expression changed for the first time. "Stop." Dalton paused. "It moved. That does not mean it released correctly." Dalton looked at the narrow gap, now visible along the seam. "Looks open to me. It is misaligned." Dalton placed pressure near the upper edge. Another small click followed. The panel shifted farther than it should have, and a carbon fiber mounting tab separated from its original position. A narrow section dropped onto the pavement with a light clatter. Nobody shouted. Nobody rushed forward. The sound was small enough that pedestrians nearby barely noticed. Jordan did. He stared at the exposed section and then looked at Dalton. "Do not touch anything else." Dalton looked down at the piece beside his shoe. For a second, uncertainty crossed his face. Then he covered it with irritation. "That can be repaired." Jordan kept his voice controlled. "That is not the point. It is a car. It is a documented asset." Dalton looked at him. "There you go again." Jordan checked his watch. For 38 in the afternoon. 8 minutes remained before 4:46. The federal operation across the street was still moving, and Jordan knew he could not let the street become the center of attention. His phone vibrated once more. The contact had moved. Amanda's team was following. Dalton looked toward the exposed area. "What is behind this?" Jordan answered carefully. "Something that should have remained untouched." "What does that mean?" "It means you were warned before you changed the condition of the vehicle." Dalton glanced at his body camera. Jordan noticed. "You keep talking about warnings," Dalton said. "Because the warning matters now. Are you planning to complain?" Jordan looked at him directly. "I am planning to make sure the facts remain clear." Dalton's jaw tightened. "You think saying things calmly makes you right?" "No. The records make the facts right." Dalton looked again at the damaged section, then at the registration papers he had already verified. Jordan could see doubt beginning to appear, but pride still stood in front of it. "If this car is really worth what you think it is," Dalton said, "insurance will handle it." Jordan's expression did not change. "The cost of the part is not what should concern you." Dalton frowned. "Then what should?" Jordan checked the street. The black sport utility vehicle's brake lights flashed once, and a dark sedan moved through the intersection behind it. The operation had reached the transfer point. Jordan looked back at Dalton. "You should be concerned that you altered a documented section after being told not to touch it." Dalton stared at him. "Documented by who?" Jordan let the silence sit for one beat. "By people who expected it to remain exactly as it was." Dalton looked toward the exposed panel again. The Ferrari was now visibly out of alignment along one side, and it could not be moved until a specialist examined the mounting system. The damage was no longer cosmetic. The car itself had become evidence of the decision Dalton had made. Jordan checked his watch again. For 39 and 12 seconds. The expensive mistake was already on the pavement. The more important consequence was still hidden behind the panel, waiting for Dalton to learn that the car had never been the only thing he had disturbed. Jordan kept his eyes on the exposed section of the Ferrari while Dalton stood beside it, still searching for an explanation that would protect the decision he had already made. The carbon fiber piece remained on the pavement. The damaged mounting area was small enough to look harmless to anyone passing by, but Jordan knew exactly why federal specialists had photographed and preserved it before the operation began. Dalton did not. You said people expected this to remain untouched, Dalton said. Who are these people? Jordan checked his watch. 4:40 in the afternoon. 6 minutes remained before the moment at 4:46 that would bring everything into the open. Federal investigators, Jordan said. Dalton stared at him. Federal investigators? Yes. You expect me to believe this car is part of some federal case? Jordan kept his voice controlled. I expect you to verify what I am telling you. Dalton looked toward the financial building across the street. The lobby doors opened, and Amanda Brooks stepped outside for several seconds before turning down the sidewalk. She did not look toward Jordan. The black sport utility vehicle pulled away from the curb and moved toward the next intersection. Dalton noticed the movement now. What kind of case? He asked. Financial crimes. And this Ferrari is evidence. Jordan chose his words carefully. It is under court-authorized federal control for a controlled operation connected to Richard Vale's financial network. Dalton looked back at the exposed panel. What does that have to do with this section? Jordan's phone vibrated twice inside his jacket. Transfer complete. The contact was now under surveillance beyond the block. The most sensitive part of Jordan's role was almost finished. Before the vehicle was deployed, Jordan said, specialists documented a preserved trace behind that access section. It is connected to the car's prior ownership history and to transactions investigators are trying to establish. Dalton's expression changed. You are saying I damaged federal evidence. I am saying you altered a documented area after being warned not to touch it without a specialist. Jordan did not exaggerate. He did not need to. The facts were finally becoming heavier than Dalton's assumptions. Dalton glanced toward his body camera. Why did you not tell me any of this earlier? Jordan looked at him. Because an active operation was taking place across the street. You could have identified yourself and risked exposing surveillance before the contact arrived. Dalton looked toward the building again. Amanda was now walking back in their direction. All of this was happening while I was standing here. Yes. The answer was quiet. That seemed to bother Dalton more than anger would have. He had believed he was controlling the only important event on the block. Now he was beginning to understand that the real operation had continued around him without his knowledge. How much is this car actually worth? He asked. Jordan paused. Close to $50 million. Dalton looked sharply at the Ferrari. Jordan continued before the number could distract him from the larger point. But the price is not what matters. The documented condition matters. The preserved trace matters. The chain of custody matters. Dalton looked down at the carbon fiber piece beside the curb. For the first time, the damage no longer seemed small to him. Amanda was less than 40 feet away now. Jordan checked his watch again. 4:41 and 28 seconds. Dalton turned back toward him, uncertainty finally overtaking confidence. Who exactly are you? Jordan met his eyes. The question had taken almost 15 minutes, matching documents, repeated warnings, and a damaged federal asset to reach the surface. Jordan did not reach for his jacket yet. He simply answered, You are finally asking the question you should have asked before deciding who I was. Jordan held Dalton's gaze for a moment, then spoke with the same deliberate calm he had used throughout the stop. I am going to reach into the inside pocket of my jacket and remove identification. Dalton's posture changed immediately. Do not move yet. Jordan stopped. That is why I told you first. Amanda Brooks was now less than 30 feet away, walking toward them with measured steps, her expression neutral enough that anyone passing by would have assumed she was just another professional leaving the financial building. Dalton noticed her. Who is she? He asked. Jordan kept his eyes on him. My supervisor. Dalton gave a doubtful look. Supervisor of what? Jordan checked his watch. 4:42 in the afternoon. May I retrieve my credentials? Dalton hesitated, then nodded. One hand. Slowly. Jordan reached inside his jacket and removed a black leather credential wallet. He opened it and held it where Dalton could clearly see the photograph, the federal seal, and the words Federal Bureau of Investigation. Dalton stared at it. His eyes moved from the credentials to Jordan's face, then back again. Special Agent Jordan Hayes, Jordan said. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Dalton did not answer immediately. A bus moved through the intersection. A pedestrian crossed behind the patrol car. Somewhere inside the financial building, The federal operation continued without them. Dalton finally said, "How do I know that is real?" Jordan's expression did not change. "Verify it. Anyone can carry something that looks official. Call dispatch. Contact the field office. Run my name." Amanda reached the curb and stopped beside Jordan. "Special Agent Hayes," she said. Jordan gave a small nod. "Contact transferred. Surveillance team has control." Amanda looked toward the Ferrari and immediately noticed the exposed passenger side section. Her eyes dropped to the carbon fiber piece on the pavement. "What happened here?" Dalton answered before Jordan could. "I was conducting a vehicle inspection." Amanda looked at him. "On what basis?" "Possible stolen vehicle." "Did the plate return stolen?" "No." "Did the registration fail?" Dalton paused. "No." "Did the visible vehicle identification number fail to match?" "No." Amanda looked at Jordan. "Did you warn him about the access section?" "Repeatedly." Dalton's jaw tightened. "He never told me he was federal until now." Jordan remained calm. "Because the operation was still active." Amanda turned back to Dalton. "Before you knew his occupation, what specific fact justified continuing after the records matched?" Dalton looked toward the Ferrari. The situation did not look right. Amanda's voice stayed level. "That is not a verified fact." Dalton glanced at Jordan again. The confidence he had carried earlier was disappearing, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that the federal badge had not changed the evidence. It had only changed what he was willing to accept. Amanda looked toward the damaged panel. "Nobody touches this vehicle again until a specialist documents it." Dalton looked toward his body camera. Amanda noticed. "Keep the camera running. All footage from this stop needs to be preserved." Dalton frowned. "You are making this sound like I committed some kind of offense." Amanda answered, "I am making sure the record shows exactly what happened." Jordan checked his watch. 4:43 and 16 seconds. The black sport utility vehicle had already disappeared beyond the intersection. The contact was under surveillance. The operation had survived. Jordan felt no satisfaction in Dalton's uncertainty. The badge had not made Jordan more deserving of fairness. Amanda's arrival had not made the registration more valid. Every important fact had been there before either of them revealed who they were. Dalton had simply refused to let those facts matter until authority appeared in a form he could no longer dismiss. A black sport utility vehicle returned to the block and stopped near the curb. Nathan Cole stepped out carrying a hard equipment case and crossed toward the Ferrari while Amanda Brooks kept her attention on the exposed passenger side section. Dalton watched him approach. "Who is that?" Amanda answered, "Forensic vehicle specialist." Nathan stopped beside the car and looked down at the carbon fiber piece on the pavement. He did not touch it. "Who opened this section?" Dalton said, "I was inspecting the vehicle." Nathan looked at the misaligned panel, then at the damaged mounting point. This area was documented before deployment. It was not designed for roadside removal. Amanda asked, "Can you tell whether the preserved trace was affected?" Nathan leaned closer without disturbing anything. "Not here. The mounting structure has shifted, and the vehicle should not be moved until the section is stabilized and examined under controlled conditions." Dalton frowned. "It is one panel." Nathan stood. "On a collector vehicle of this value, one original assembly can affect structural alignment, provenance, and specialist restoration. The size of the part does not tell you the cost." Jordan checked his watch. 4:44 and 3 seconds. A marked supervisor vehicle turned onto the street and stopped behind Dalton's patrol car. Sergeant Kevin Marshall stepped out and walked toward them with a measured expression. "Eric, what is happening?" Dalton answered quickly. "Possible stolen exotic vehicle. I was verifying ownership." Marshall looked at Jordan and Amanda. Both presented federal credentials. He examined them carefully and handed them back. "Federal Bureau of Investigation?" Amanda nodded. "Active financial crimes operation." Marshall turned to Dalton. "Did the plate return stolen?" "No." "Registration mismatch?" "No." "Vehicle identification number discrepancy?" Dalton hesitated. "No confirmed discrepancy." Marshall looked at him for a long second. "Then what fact caused you to continue the inspection?" Dalton glanced toward Jordan. "The circumstances were suspicious." Marshall asked, "Which circumstances?" Dalton did not answer immediately. Amanda remained silent. Jordan remained silent. Nathan remained beside the Ferrari. Marshall continued, "Did Agent Hayes provide the documents you requested?" Dalton looked away. "Yes." "Did they match?" "Yes." Did he warn you not to disturb this section without a qualified technician? Another pause. Yes. Marshall looked at the damaged panel. Body camera recording? Yes. Marshall keyed his radio. Dispatch. Preserve all body camera footage, vehicle checks, radio traffic, and incident records connected to this stop. Jordan checked the time again. 4:45 and 8 seconds. Marshall looked back at Dalton. You are done with this stop. Step away from the vehicle. Dalton's face tightened. Sergeant, I was doing my job. Marshall answered calmly. Then the record will show that. The words changed the air more than any argument could have. No humiliation. No revenge. Just verification. Dalton stepped back. Nathan began photographing the damaged area from several angles without touching the car. Amanda made a note on her phone. Jordan looked toward the financial building. The contact had already moved beyond the block under federal surveillance. The operation had survived. The Ferrari could eventually be repaired. What could not be repaired so easily was the sequence of decisions already preserved on camera. Marshall looked at Dalton again. Before you knew Agent Hayes worked for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, before you saw federal credentials, what specific fact made you decide he did not legitimately belong with this vehicle? Dalton opened his mouth, then stopped. No answer came. Jordan checked his watch. 4:46 in the afternoon. The question had finally reached the exact place every matching document had been pointing from the beginning. The balance of authority had not changed because Jordan became more important. It changed because the facts had finally been given room to speak. 3 weeks later, Jordan Hayes stood inside a secure federal vehicle facility while Nathan Cole completed the final inspection of the restored Ferrari. Under the bright ceiling lights, the deep red paint looked flawless again. The original carbon fiber assembly had been repaired where possible, the damaged mounting system had been stabilized, and the preserved forensic trace remained usable in the financial crimes investigation. Amanda Brooks entered carrying a thin folder and stopped beside Jordan. The departmental review came through, she said. Jordan looked at her, and Amanda opened the folder. The body camera confirmed the timeline. Your registration was valid. The plate was clean. The visible vehicle identification number matched. Your warnings about the access section were recorded before Officer Dalton disturbed it. Jordan nodded slowly. What happens now? Sergeant Marshall removed him from field duty pending the department's administrative investigation. The city is reviewing the property damage, and federal counsel documented the interference with the controlled operation. Jordan looked back at the Ferrari. And Richard Vale? Amanda's expression softened slightly. The contact led the team to 2 additional financial accounts and another shell company. The investigation is still active. Nathan closed his equipment case. The preserved trace survived too. We were able to document it without losing continuity. Jordan let out a quiet breath. Good. Nathan glanced along the Ferrari's body. Most people would be thinking about the repair bill. Jordan looked at the car for several seconds. That was never the most expensive part of that afternoon. Amanda watched him. What was? Jordan turned toward her. The assumption. Nathan remained quiet. Jordan continued. Dalton had the correct registration. He had a clean plate. He had a matching vehicle identification number. He had every opportunity to verify what was in front of him. None of it mattered because he had already decided what the picture meant. Amanda nodded. Until he saw the badge. Jordan looked at her. The badge changed what he was willing to believe. It did not change the truth. A few days later, Jordan returned to the same downtown block in an ordinary government sedan. The financial building reflected the afternoon sun. Office workers crossed beneath the same traffic lights. A delivery truck stopped near the corner. Nothing about the street looked different. Amanda arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee and handed one to him. Different car today, she said. Jordan glanced toward the curb where the Ferrari had once stood. Different reaction too. No one stared at the sedan. No patrol car turned around. No one asked Jordan why he was there or whether the vehicle really belonged under his control. He took a sip of coffee. That is what stays with me. Amanda looked at him. What does? Jordan watched people move through the intersection. How easily people confuse status with worth. He paused. The Ferrari showed what I was driving. The credentials showed where I worked. Neither should have been necessary to prove I deserved fairness. Amanda said nothing. She did not need to. Jordan thought about Dalton, the damaged panel, the preserved evidence, and the question Sergeant Marshall had asked at 4:46 that afternoon. He felt no satisfaction in Dalton's suspension from field duty. Accountability was not supposed to feel like revenge. It was supposed to create a record strong enough that excuses could no longer replace facts. The Ferrari could be repaired. The investigation could recover. A damaged panel could be restored by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Assumptions were harder to fix because they often arrived quietly, disguised as certainty, before evidence ever had a chance to speak. Dalton had believed the most valuable thing on that street was a $50 million Ferrari. He had been wrong. The most valuable thing was the truth he refused to see until every reason for ignoring it had disappeared.